Hello, my name is Luke Peterson. I am the owner of it's right there, maintenance department at Magnolia Home Comfort. I'm based out of Louisville, Kentucky. I've been a service technician starting in refrigeration since about 2010. Transferred into HVAC around 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, doing it on the side, being a chuck in a truck, that kind of guy. And so that's a little bit about my introduction briefly. I would just like to thank you, Brian Orr and the Kalos group for allowing this symposium to occur every year. It's a great opportunity for us to all come together and just learn from one another and rub shoulders with people who go through the throes of HVAC highs and lows. So well, let's get into it. So today I'm going to be talking about how to be a thorough tech, understanding the heart and mind. And so this is going to be kind of like a 30,000-foot view of what it means to actually be a technician and some practical tips of, like how we can be more efficient and more thorough and provide a better level of service for our customers and ultimately be good employees for our employer and have just a more fulfilling career. Quick little overview of what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to give you a little bit more of my background, some hindrances to thoroughness, what drives us to be excellent, what drives us to be informed, and then we're going to kind of corporately discuss some practical tips, and then what we're going to do with this information going out from here. Starting off with this quote, this is one of my favorite ones. The difference between something good and something great is attention to detail. And that's really going to come into play as we think about how we think about our job of when we're in front of a customer, when we're loading our van up, all of those things that we do on a day-to-day basis. How many technicians do we have here? How many managers? How many business owners? Like, who's a technician? Okay, vast majority. Who's a business owner? Okay, who's a manager? Okay, who's an equipment manufacturer? Steve. So we got a pretty good group of people here, both managers, owners, technicians, and then like myself, I'm a owner, manager, and technician, so there's a lot of wearing of hats. So takeaways from today, your investment in yourself pays dividends. Your customers deserve better, and you will have a more fulfilling career. So why does this matter? Well, HVAC is a customer service industry. Our customers have suffered, as we all know. We've seen the pictures on various Facebook groups and memes from bad HVAC practices for way too long. By not being thorough, we're helping perpetuate the stigma. And then implementing new and better practices is going to help your future. And iron sharpens one iron, and one man sharpens another. Proverbs 27:17. So let's all help each other become better. The photo here, so that's a carbon monoxide reading. I don't know if you guys in the back can see that. It's reading 97 parts per million, and this is one of our local guys decided that he was going to just grab some random inducer off another furnace and put it on a gas furnace. And so we went in to do this call, and the customer's carbon monoxide is going crazy, and I looked at that and I thought that was probably one of the worst repairs I've seen, but that's not uncommon, unfortunately, where I'm at. So what are some hindrances to thoroughness? So anytime you see a question in blue, that's going to be us discussing it or giving feedback from you. So, so what has prevented you from being thorough? Cost? Time? When you say time, what do you mean by time? Like pressure from yourself, pressure from your management? Multiple calls? Okay. What did you say, Matthew? Nathan, sorry. Too many things piled up to do in one day. Not being prepared. You don't like the customer? That's one I didn't put down. That's a good one. We have a couple of those. Space restrictions, okay. Lack of training, All right. Yeah. So, so I separated these in two kind of internal and external circumstances of what caused us to not be thorough, laziness, feeling rushed, disorganized, poor self-care, lack of rest, unpreparedness, mental distress. This is a big one. I mean, I've had guys that had been going through some really difficult situations, and it caused callbacks because their mind just wasn't in the right spot. And so those are legitimate things. Assumptions without verification. You know, like I think I did it, and jump in the truck and you're 15 miles away and get a phone call. External circumstances, work pressure, weather. How many of you have rushed off a job because it was about to lightning? You're on a roof and you know. So some of these reasons why we might not be thorough might be legitimate, but we're going to be talking about the stuff that we can really work together with and at least getting our heart and mind in the right spot. You know, there's always going to be that time when you have to jump off a roof because of the lightning storm coming. Lack of training. That's one thing I like about this symposium is, I mean, you're drinking from a water hose when you're just doing it on your own, but when you're here with everybody else, you're drinking from a fire hose, and there's a lot of information here. So yeah, you know, everything that you're here for, soak it up. Lack of process, lack of guidelines, lack of expectations, or incorrect expectations. What about this one? What do you see with younger people? Yeah. So how do we address that? You know, as a manager, how do we address it as an owner? How should you guys address it when you see younger guys coming on? And after your 70th hour, what do you want to do? Put your feet up. Yeah. So a little more about my background. This is my family. Somebody looks like that is in the back of the room. That's my son. Been married for 25 years. I've got 3 children. They're all adults. I went to Chippewa Valley Technical College and had I can't really call it a degree. Went to school for electromechanical technology, trying to get into automated systems and robotics. A lot of backstory there that I can't go into. Ended up being one math class short, so I didn't actually end up with a degree. So heading into my career of being a maintenance tech for various industrial companies, and always held me back because I didn't have that piece of paper that said I was qualified. So how I got into HVAC, I moved down to Louisville to attend college, ended up getting laid off immediately after I came down, and a guy at my church got me a job at a refrigeration company. And so that's where I started. In 2010, I started my time in the HVACR world as a refrigeration tech, working on commercial refrigeration, and yeah, just learning from there. I also did like facility maintenance and started dabbling in HVAC at the same time, around that time. So in my early career, I did get canned 3 times because of gross immaturity. Now, I didn't have a cell phone at the time. I did have a cell phone, but it didn't have, you know, it was just a beep, boop, boop phone. So there wasn't anything I could play on it or watch on it to get me fired. So this was just all natural, me being an idiot. I got fired. A lot of immaturity in my early years. So that really shaped where I'm at today is, you know, when you have 3 kids and you get fired 3 times, you start thinking you're doing something wrong. And so naturally, I started thinking that. So what was really formative, though, was when I was working for this refrigeration company, my boss introduced me to one of his family members as, "This is Luke. He's lazy." Like, that's legitimately what he said. And I decided, and I was lazy. Don't get me wrong. Like, if there was an opportunity to sit down and read a magazine, I was probably going to do that. So that was early 2010. Anyway, so those corrective statements really shaped me. I also had a manager that was very, very angry all the time, and so I didn't like making him angry. And so I decided, well, I'm going to be the best service tech that I can be. I'm going to never give anybody the opportunity to tell me I'm lazy or introduce me as lazy. I mean, that's one thing. It's one thing to be told you're lazy. It's another thing, like, here's this person, he's lazy. You know, it was embarrassing, to say the least. So anyway, that's kind of what has shaped me where I am today, and what drives me to want to be thorough for my customers, for myself, and for, well, you know, for me as my employer. And so hopefully this helps. So what drives you to be excellent? So we're going to take a couple minutes and look at the heart. When I say heart, I'm not talking about the organ that pumps your blood. I'm talking about the center from where your desires and your wants come from. Sometimes we can think about this as our attitude, our mindset. Basically, what makes us do what we do is really comes from the heart. And so we have a tendency to let our heart overshadow our mind to some degree. Like, I really don't want to go up into that hot attic again. I'm pretty sure I put that disconnect in. I'm going out. And you get a call 15 minutes later, half an hour later, our house is still hot. What did you do? Didn't you do anything? And you're like, I'm pretty sure it's running. You go back up there and you don't have a disconnect in there. But your mind said, go do it. Your heart said, I don't want to. So we're gonna look at a little bit of this duality and try to figure out, like, okay, what do we need to do? So a couple terms when I was doing this research for this class is, I fell in love with these words, actually. Sedulous. Can everybody say that? Sedulous. Showing dedication and diligence. So these are $20 words. I had to pay Oxford a lot for them. And then the next one is assiduous, showing great care and perseverance. And so these are two words that I think really resonate with where our heart needs to be as technicians. Showing dedication and diligence, meaning you're dedicated to your craft, you're dedicated to your customer, you're dedicated to your future, and you're going to be diligent to do the hard stuff to get into, to be more thorough. Assiduous is showing great care and perseverance. And so perseverance is a word that I like because it shows that you're enduring something difficult in order to achieve the goal. You know, nobody perseveres sitting in front of the TV watching football. You wouldn't say, I'm persevering. But you're persevering when you're out there at, 7:30 at night after a 12-hour day, and you now just realize this compressor's bad. You got to persevere to get that system back up and going. And so there's a lot of weight wrapped up into what being thorough actually is. So definition of thorough, probably fairly self-explanatory, but carried through to completion, exhaustive, marked by full detail, careful about detail, painstaking. This is a word that I like, again, because you're taking the pains, you're cutting yourself, you're stabbing yourself, you're burning yourself to get the job done complete. So there's a lot of pain in HVAC, especially when you're in a crawl space and there's spiders. So complete in all respects, having mastery as of an art. And so when you're thinking through what does thorough mean, it doesn't mean you're trying to complete the task according to what your boss wants done necessarily, but you're trying to think through, like, how am I going to be more thorough in how I'm speaking to the customer, how I'm presenting myself, how I'm keeping track of my tools, how I'm restocking my van. All of these different things is a very, it's a very broad subject, but it's also a very important way of thinking through things. So some opposite words, antonyms to thoroughness: superficial, cursory. One of the problems that I would do when I was first a tech is I'd grab my 11-in-1, put it in my back pocket, walk through the store, couldn't find anything wrong, and leave. And it's silly. But anyway, that's what I did. And they would call back to the office and say, hey, your guy was here. He didn't go through anything. He didn't look at it. He just said everything was working fine. And I was doing a very, very superficial. I only did that once. I did a very superficial And then they told me, because I hadn't been a service tech before, so I did a very superficial look, and they said, okay, well, now you need to go get your tools. You need to measure, put your gauges on, take temperatures, like do the stuff of gathering your information. And so, like I said, I was lazy. Now I'm less lazy. So the desire to be thorough comes from the heart. It comes from your attitude. It comes from your mindset. It's like, I want to do my job as best as I can. I want to serve the customer in this way every time. And yeah, and excellence comes through thoroughness. Vince Lombardi, great football coach, Green Bay Packers, perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. What's the ideal callback number? 0. Are we ever going to have that? No, but less is always better. And so if we have this number here, at my company, we don't track callbacks. It's not something that I want to spend a lot of time doing. I just know, hey, they were just out there. They have to go back. And so it's not something that I'm, documenting, quantifying, measuring, all of that as of right now. As we get bigger, we probably will need to. However, it is notable that as my technicians have increased in knowledge, increased in wanting to do it right, the callbacks do diminish. And so it is a goal that we have to go. 0 is the goal, but we don't always necessarily, we'll never always get to 0. So, yes? What is an actual good number? Yeah, percentage-wise. So the question is, what is an actual good number for the callback number? Obviously, 0 is the goal. It's going to depend on several factors. Number one, the advancement of your technicians, the type of call that it was on. There's a lot of different people that have a lot of different opinions on what a good number for callbacks is. Really, what I'm trying to focus on isn't so much the business aspect of what's a good number for a business, what's a bad number, but like how can we as individuals, as individual technicians, do better and reduce our own personal callbacks, and then also we have the desire to want to be more complete. So that's a good question. I could talk to you about it later because I have ideas, but this isn't a business 101. So, all right. So we're going to spend most of the time kind of talking about the drive to be informed, because when you want to be informed, you're going to go seeking after information. And when you want to be thorough, you're going to seek out ways to be more efficient, ways to be more thorough, ways to complete your tasks in a more proficient way. And so we're going to look at like a couple things of why the mind is important and what we're going to do about it. That was kind of a weird way of saying stuff. Okay. A technician is an expert in their field. And I was thinking about this. It seems like everybody's called a technician nowadays. If you go to a cafe being served by a lunch technician, and the custodial technician takes the trash away, and your sanitary technician takes your garbage away. Like, a technician might be an overused word, but really what a technician is somebody who's involved in the technical details of their craft. And so that means that you're going to be spending a lot more time in the stuff that's going to bore your customers to tears if you talk to them about it, because I've done that. And you're going to be understanding all of the little details of HVAC, whether it's building science or just how the systems work and things like that. So you're an expert, or you're pursuing to be an expert. How does one become an expert? So the drive must come from you. There's no limitation to the amount of information available. When I first got into HVAC, pretty much the only thing that I had available to me was the refrigeration air conditioning manual. There was some stuff on the internet at that time. Copeland had not publicly published, at least on the internet, any of their information. All pretty much everything Copeland makes now is publicly accessible from their website. Obviously, institutions like the HVAC school have helped really drive a lot more information out there. There's just a world of information out there, and if you can't find information, it's just a matter of looking in the right spot or talking to the right person, because there is so much available right now. And so your knowledge, gaining knowledge is only limited to how hungry you are to get it. So I'm going to use a little analogy here and try to track with me. I do woodworking on the side, and I've split a lot of wood, chopped a lot of trees down with an axe, and so this is, I think, a helpful analogy, so bear with me. The labor of gaining knowledge makes the labor of doing your craft easier. So in other words, if you're putting stuff in your brain, remembering it, it's going to make your job easier. Not necessarily physically easier, but at least the technical side of it. So can you cut a tree with a dull axe? Yeah. Will it be less labor to use a sharp axe? Okay, it's kind of basic, yes. Is the act of sharpening physically less intense than chopping with a dull axe in general? Yeah. Your mind is your axe. Your axe is your mind. And so when you take time to sharpen your mind, it will make the act of what you do easier. Let's see. So again, what can one do to become an expert? Read manuals, RTFM, read both the technical and instructional. Like if you're in an area where you're being asked to do service work in an area that you're not familiar with, grab an instructional manual from your local either your supply house or Amazon or whatever. Grab a technical manual, read through it. When I say technical manuals, I'm talking about like the manufacturer's manuals. Like I would take, if I had an install going before, if I had an install and I had the equipment beforehand, I would open it up, take all the manuals out, read them, make sure I had an idea what the install was going to look like and be required. So I was better prepared for the next day, because there's a lot of information in those that if you overlook some of that, you're going to be not have the right stuff on your truck. You're going to have make multiple trips and stuff like that. This is where we're going to shift gears a little bit, where we talk about efficiency, because efficiency is a big part of being thorough. If you're an inefficient person, you're going to have a tendency to make a lot of missteps. So what are some things that you frequently forget that result in return trips or unhappy customers? Jumper on. Yeah. Leaving the disconnect out. How many times have you done that? More than he cares to share. Leaving the disconnect out. Okay. Forget to check the drain line. Yeah. Leaving the capacitor disconnected. What else? I mean, we've all done stupid stuff. I've not checked air filters, tripping on high limit, go to the supply house, grab a high limit, come back, doing the same thing. Oh, air filter. Leave a universal blower motor running the wrong direction. Okay. Any others? Yeah. Failing to communicate clearly with the customer or setting their expectations accordingly. Yeah. So this is in the off position after one of our cleaning checks. So we got to go back and after the weather turned cold and turn that back on for them. So we're not perfect. I'm not standing up here as I've got it all figured out, but I'm trying really hard. So tools left on job, things that are return trips, tools left on job, gas valve left off, disconnect, not checking filter, trips back and forth to van, improperly stocked truck, disorganized truck, empty refrigerant cylinders. We just had that one on an install last week. Made me feel good. Transcription errors. Made me feel good, especially since I was doing this presentation. So anyway, how many times have you written down the wrong model number or the wrong part number and it caused an incorrect purchase of a part? Or is that common? Yeah. Right. Forget to get the data, and you know you need a control board, and you don't know which one. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about efficiency and how that relates to thoroughness. Think through how you can gain efficiency. Efficiency affects thoroughness. Being efficient is an extension of being mindful at your job. So if you're wanting to be efficient, you're thinking through processes, you're thinking through steps, your mind is actively involved in what you're doing. It shows that you understand the process involved, understands the tools required for the task. So this is not one of our vans, but I thought that was a good one. So let's walk through some practical steps in how to do this, how to become more efficient. All right. One of the things that a guy named Chuck Wellington told me when I was first starting to do service work, he was on install for refrigeration, and he told me never waste a trip to the truck. And so basically, as you're moving stuff into the job site to do the work, as the stuff is completed, and you have to go back to the truck and grab another part of the process, take stuff with you, and he basically said, never have your hands empty. And it really does help considerably if you're always thinking through, because when you bring everything back to the truck at the end of the day, guess what you don't want to do? You don't want to organize it. You want to throw it in the back of your van, your football game's on, and you're tired and you need a beer. So list the tools. So a couple practical things. List the tools taken off the truck. I worked with a guy who he didn't have a very good memory. So anything he took off the truck, whether it was a vacuum pump, his gauges, his tool bag, he would take his notepad out of his pocket, he'd write it down, put it back in his pocket, and he'd review that notepad at the end of every day, and I never saw him forget a single thing on the job. So he was very, very thorough in how he thought about keeping his truck organized and not having to drive back, 2 hours. I left my tool pouch. I was working on an ice maker in Campbellsville, Kentucky. It's 2.5 hours from Louisville, and I decided that, or I left it there and didn't realize it till I got to the job the next day, which was further away, and so I had to drive all the way back to Campbellsville, Kentucky to get my tool pouch. And in the process of that, the rookie that I had with me, I told him, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to pump down the system, blah, 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 blah. He pumped it down and left the compressor running for 3 hours in a vacuum. So I was there till, I think, 10:30 that night replacing that compressor. Thankfully, it wasn't my company. Otherwise, that would have been expensive. But anyway, it was my stupidity that caused that issue. And so had I actually taken the time to make sure I had all my stuff with me in my truck, that issue wouldn't have happened. And then I also learned that you can blow oil out of a vacuum pump all over your helper, which he thought I did it intentionally, but I assure you I probably didn't. So yeah. So anyway, there can be a catastrophe of issues if you're not kind of working through the steps on how to keep your stuff together. So keep your truck stocked. Write things down that need to be replaced. Carry a notepad. A lot of us use our phones. That's fine. Use your phone, but be in the habit of writing stuff down, because when you write stuff down, it not only helps you remember it, but it also has an option to look back as a reference. So just the act of writing it down typically is going to put it in your brain, and then if you have to, you can go back and review it. Um, ensure thermostats are function correctly. Verify. Now that gas valve that I showed you that was in the off position uh, had the technician gone back and actually tested the functions before he left, we would have caught that and wouldn't have caused a return trip. That stuff happens. My guys are pretty young in the trade, so these are just birth pains, growing pains of the having a young company. Put tools away, then do a walk through the job site. I've heard it said like, okay, I'm just gonna take my keys. I'm gonna put them in on top of the water heater. That way, if I forget them, I know I got to come back there and guess what? I got to relight the water heater. So there's things you can do, but I always make sure that my guys do a walkthrough after they're done. I don't care how late it is. We're going to go through every part of that job and make sure that we have all of our stuff and the switches on, the gas valves on, the disconnects in, all of that. We're going to make sure that we got that part done. At the end of the day, think through your inventory level. Don't make assumptions. It's really important to write stuff down that you take off the truck so that you have a list for the next morning, because generally people aren't going to go back to the shop and restock the truck. They're going to park the truck and go home. And so if you have a notepad, you have that stuff written down, it's going to add a lot of, it's going to take away a lot of anxiety of trying to remember it and making sure you have it stocked. Installers, think through your incidentals. What I call incidentals are your thermostat wire, your tapes, your duct butter, all of those things. Like, did you use it up? Is it low? Replace it. Again, write it down. Carry a notepad. What didn't you have on the truck that you needed? We always have seemed to be lacking something, and so we went through pretty thoroughly. We all talked through as a group. Let's talk through an install. What do you typically not have that you need? And so we added it to truck stock. So let's talk about some more ideas. You guys have any that you want to add? Yes. Routine. Yeah. Yep. Be in a routine. Yep. Right. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what he's saying for the people online is do the same thing every time. He says he goes to the thermostat, checks the air filter, does the same thing every time because the customers forget how to be human, essentially. What else? What else do we do? You need to slow down to go fast. I like that. Say that again. Yep. Correct. Yeah, he says diagnose more precisely. Don't just start throwing parts at stuff. Follow your checklist. How many of your companies have like either a service procedure or an install procedure that you follow? Okay. Do they require you to turn it in at the end of each install? Okay. Okay. Our company wrote a common residential install procedure, which is basic. Um, it's basically like 1,000-foot view of like this is what's expected. Lay down drop clause. Circle back, check. Kind of like what we discussed here. And we went from having it seemed like a callback on just about every install to almost zero callbacks on installs that were not related to something that we omitted. And so that was a huge help. What else? Anything else? Yes. send the list to the client. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that accountability level is going to be beneficial. Like if you know that the client is going to be there watching you, and you send that list to them, like, they didn't do that. That puts it back on you to at least have some responsibility. Yeah, Matthew.
Make it so your processes sort of check themselves. Like clean everything and then test everything. You don't like test some stuff and clean some stuff and then go back and forth. If you work a process where you take everything apart and then you put it all back together and test it, well then the test verifies that you put everything back together correctly.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
Don't check the charge, then wash the unit. Wash the unit, then check the charge. Like make it so that
Right.
everything's kind of self-reinforcing.
Yeah, he says make sure that your processes are checking themselves. So have a common, or how did you phrase it? Say it again. How do you phrase it?
Like yeah, everything checks itself basically.
Yeah, everything checks itself. Okay. Yes, sir.
Making sure your tools are ready to go, vacuum pump, oil, batteries in your probes, all this good stuff. You don't want to be on the roof and run out of battery juice.
Right. Yeah. Having all of your tools, all of your equipment ready to go. What was that? Yeah. Learn how to use the tool. That's a good segue. So now so there's the two kind of categories of like what causes callbacks. Kind of forgetful stuff, but then we also have, as I described earlier, a misdiagnosis. I change the high limit instead of looking at the filter. So these are kind of the basic 4 categories of common things, but there's more. Have all the testing tools with you at the diagnosis. You just don't walk in there with your 11-in-1 and think that you're going to fix everything with just a screwdriver. Now, if it's a Manitowoc ice maker, you can diagnose pretty much everything with an 11-in-1. And a jumper, because they have a board that tells you everything. So anyway, do you know how to use all of your testing tools? Do you know how to use your digital voltmeter? Do you know how to when to use the amp probe? Do you know how to test for milliamps DC? Do you know how to read your psychometrics? All of those tools. Like, if you don't know how to do those things, if you're not familiar with tools that you have in your truck, take time to learn how to use them. Practice on your home system. It's a lot less embarrassing to break your own system than it is your customers. And so practice on your own system. And how many of you have redundancy tools in your trucks? Yeah. Why do you have redundancy tools? Because you've left tools, exactly. Right. Yeah. So, I was actually going to say, you should have some redundancy so that, your customers aren't suffering. You can continue doing your job, and then if you have to go back and eat some crow getting a tool. I left one of these in a furnace, and I never went back and got it because I was embarrassed. So it happens. You're not looking at a perfect guy here. So it happens, and what you do is you just make sure, if you want to be thorough for the next job, you make sure you get one of those immediately from the supply house the next morning. So, yes, sir. Right. Yeah, you have tools that fail. I had a fluke. Yeah, he's saying sometimes you have tools that will just quit. And so if you have some level of redundancy to be able to continue with your service call, it's going to help because tools break. So when you call your manufacturer rep for tech support, have all the information with you ready because they're a little bit better than Google, but basically garbage in, garbage out. So if you call them and you say, I have X and Z, they're going to say, well, it's probably A and B. And so you want to be able to give them as much information so they can make an informed diagnosis with you while you're there. And so we were just sitting in a training class last week, and one of the guys, or the guy doing the training, said he was really frustrated all of the time when he had he had people call in because they wouldn't have any of their information with them. He's like, oh, I got to go back out to my truck and grab my meter. Oh, I haven't even opened up the unit yet. You know, so having done those steps with the tools you have on site is going to help you be a lot more thorough. So this is a nice proverb that I really like. Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. And over there, it's kind of grayed out, but it's mostly just a note for my reminder. Basically, we were working at a building downtown. The sprinkler guy was supposed to check the entire line, every single sprinkler head. All the sprinkler heads are supposed to be brand new. There was one that went over a wall, and he didn't want to get the ladder, and check that last one. And so I was up at Christmas visiting my parents, and my tech sends me this video. Yeah. Yeah. So this is just an example of why thoroughness really matters. So so what do we do now? So we got just a few minutes left, and I want to have some time for some questions. So what do we do now? Your investment in yourself pays dividends. So acquire knowledge and seek to work efficiently. Your customers deserve better. We are not just keeping homes comfortable, we are keeping them safe. As you saw in the beginning with that inducer fail, it still makes me mad when I think about that. Anyway, be thorough for the sake of your community. And then you will have a more fulfilling career. When you want to be excellent, you will be, and you will be respected because of it. So that's my hope and help for you guys, is that this will just really help you propel yourselves to be more thorough, more competent, and really provide excellent service for the communities you serve. Any questions? Yes, sir.
In your company, how do you deal with a situation whereby you have a customer call you, and when you go there, you cannot duplicate the problem? Everything works fine, and then they call you 2, 3 days or a week after with the same issue. You go back there, and the same thing happens. It's not doing what they say it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so the question is, how do you deal with the customer who calls and they have an issue? You go back there, you can't duplicate it, so you leave. You have to go back again. They call again. How do you deal with that? So there's always going to be complexities like that. I try to be very, very in front of the situation. And so, for example, I will give the customer basically some investigative tools, so to speak, where I will say, okay, when you experience this again, I would like you to tell me the temperature on the thermostat. I would also like you to tell me the temperature outside, and I will ask just a bunch of investigative questions, try to gather as much data from nothing as possible. And usually at that time, they'll start paying attention to it enough to realize that maybe it is an issue, or maybe it's not an issue, or you get enough information where you can make some sort of diagnosis. But I try to stay very in front of those situations. We do have a situation like that with a rather large home that I've been dealing with, and so basically just being very forward. And like from my perspective, my company is, I'm customer service focused first, and so I want to make sure that they're comfortable in their home, and so basically, you know, whatever it takes to make sure that happens is where we're at. And then I worry about, like, okay, we spent 80 hours out here trying to figure this issue out, and, you know, like, how do we recover, you know, any financial, or we just, you know, take it as a loss, you know. But my goal is to provide that service first, and then yeah, just stick with the customer, be their partner through that difficult situation. So any other questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, videos. Yeah. 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 I found it's very, very beneficial to get the customer involved in helping you diagnose what's wrong with it. They have a lot of data. They live in their house. They're used to the noises it makes, and so they can actually be quite a tool. But you just have to give them specifics to what to look for. So, any others? Yes.
What if a technician and you want to be more thorough on your maintenance and services, but the company just we don't have that time for you to dig deeper?
I would say to that, speed up. Really, it's just going to depend on so there's things you can do to increase your efficiency, to increase your speed. One of them is just simply walking faster back and forth to the van, trying to do your job efficiently and quickly. My previous employer, who I learned the refrigeration from, he was very impatient, and if he had 16 calls, it was my fault that he had 16 calls and I wasn't getting to him fast enough. So really, it just caused me to just work really fast. So I would encourage that, but sometimes you just have to have a conversation with your employer and just say, look, I want to be really thorough. I want to do a really good job for you. Can you either back off, or can we talk about this in a way that's going to serve our customers better, and go from that angle? Yes, Bert.
People ask me a lot, and I get a lot of texts asking too, who are frustrated with other technicians. Do you think it's effective, or does it work to have consequences or callback for technicians? Is that where there's some sort of consequence or punishment or
Financial or
fine? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you seen any system that works? Because I surprisingly get asked a lot, like, do you guys have a way of punishing your employees for callback?
So the question is there
Other techs, like, okay, this one tech is driving me crazy. Can't you do something?
yeah,
consequences is a better word.
yeah. Do you give techs who have callbacks timeout is the question, or consequences or spankings, whatever it is. I'll ask Isaiah, what works for you? You don't know? Typically, what I do is we just have a discussion. We have a talk. I haven't found that a consequence is of much consequence, and so really it boils down to like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to be thorough, or you don't want to be thorough? You want to do it right, or you don't want to do it right? You know, and at those, once you kind of answer those questions, you kind of see like, well, is this person a good fit for the company, and stuff like that. And that's a hard decision. Yes, Mr. Rogers.
General management practice, things like public shame usually are not productive. However, if you track individual callback lists and discuss that with employees at their performance review, that can be very effective. But any sort of like public call out, yeah, probably unhelpful.
Yeah, Steve says that typically public call out or public shaming is typically not too effective, and I would tend to agree with that. I mean, I haven't ever, stood any of my techs up in front of everybody and said, okay, everybody make fun of them for 5 minutes for forgetting a gas valve. It just doesn't work. So are we how are we on time? 2 minutes. Okay. Yes, sir. Sorry. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so what he's saying is that he gives a spiff for completed jobs that pass inspection. He gives a spiff for incentivizing being thorough and getting the job done correctly. Yes, sir.
If you track that callback rate, instead of punishing the guys that have the callbacks, reinforce the guy that has the least callbacks.
Yeah, reinforce those who don't have callbacks. Yeah.
Give those guys that spit.
Yeah. Nate, and then what's your name? Beatles. Okay. Nate, go ahead.
Something that we've done, it's been something that somebody misdiagnosed.
Uh-huh.
If you can, we'll try to send another tech over
Sure.
with that first
Yeah, send them back with another tech that might help. Yep. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you're willing, give this video a thumbs up and drop us a comment. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to stay updated with all of our future videos. And as a quick reminder, HVAC School isn't just a YouTube channel. Dive deeper with us at our main website, hvacrschool.com. Curious for more knowledge on the go? We've got you covered. Tune into the HVAC School podcast, available on all your favorite podcast apps. And while you're at it, join our thriving Facebook group. Also, don't miss out on our free mobile applications available for both iPhone and Android. We're all about community, for techs, by techs.